Hi, Lisa. Good evening. It is August 21st, 6:30 p.m. Calling laws and rules to order. Chairwoman Michelle Hirsch, we have Alderman Michael Tierney filling in tonight, Alderwoman Sarah Hasty. We have Alderwoman Mickens and guest Alderwoman Edwards, Corporation Counsel Frank Kelsey. Okay, first item on the agenda is the Sidewalk Cafe Code Amendment, which was submitted by Alderman Tierney.
Yes, I submitted this following a conversation I had with the mayor. He issued an executive order a few months ago, eliminating the requirement that your landlord sign off for your outdoor dining. This comes after some issues that some businesses in Uptown have been having with certain property owners, sort of using that as a reason to not renew leases or jack up their commercial rents by quite a bit. Which I don't think was foreseen when this code was designing. People might act in bad faith in this weird instance. So this is just codifying the mayor's executive order rather than him having to renew it every 30 days, because per the charter, he's allowed to suspend parts of the code through executive order for 30 days. And he seems, based off of the conversations I've had, that he'd be willing to do that until the sun dies out. So it's better for us to just move forward with actually amending the code rather than have this through executive order in perpetuity.
Sounds reasonable. So I guess my question was, when I looked at his executive order, it's the whole paragraph that's being
Yes.
removed, not just that sentence.
Correct.
Okay, that's all, that was my only question.
And so would this also, because I know you're concerned with Uptown, but this would be just city.
This is citywide, but this is stemming from an
Right.
issue in my
Right,
report.
right. So would this make it easier then for new curbside eateries to be established?
I don't think it would make it harder. They would still have to apply and pay the fee.
Right.
But they now don't, they have one less hoop to jump through if they're, especially if they're a commercial tenant. Rather than, a lot of businesses do.
Right,
obviously.
absolutely.
Right,
In which case they wouldn't need to ask anybody for permission.
and they still have to do a site plan. they
Yes,
still have-
and
it
it
has
still
to-
needs to be
that-
ADA
is-
compliant,
right.
it still needs to come
And so
down.
needs to go through DPW to determine the parking, how much will be impacted.
Yes.
So is it okay to just?
Well, is this just on for a conversation, because there hasn't been anything
Yeah,
submitted to
Yeah,
basically like
yeah, nothing's been.
proposed, local law to amend, or actually, I think this is a regulation, so do it by ordinance, but anything proposed with the wording. And what you're asking is just to remove the sentence that the mayor has in his.
But that's the
executive
paragraph, not just the
Um,
sentence.
It's the paragraph.
Well, that subsection actually includes an additional portion that relates to adjacent property owners.
Right.
So I'm guessing that you're gonna wanna leave that in, that adjacent property owners, would need to consent if something extends to an adjacent property owner or renter.
That's a good point.
I'm fine with both the committees.
I mean, this isn't an issue now, I mean, it's the
Yeah,
end of the
we can-
season, so I think we should just like make sure everything
And I can,
is,
yeah, if you want to send an email to our office, and ask, we can propose some language, basically, would be basically removing, that section of the code and replacing it with whatever the new language would be.
okay.
Yes, I guess it may, now that we're talking about it, it may be worth keeping that one sentence in if this is extending, because the person who would be putting it in would not have any relationship with the building owner next door if it was going on to adjacent property.
Yep, I think that's reasonable.
But I think that would be handled in the site plan.
Well, if it's not required by law that, or by the ordinance that you would need their consent, it's
Then it
not
would
something
come.
that necessarily would be denied because they don't have it. The issue might arise because those properties would be responsible for the maintenance and clearing of snow and other stuff. And now we're also, potentially letting someone else utilize that portion of the sidewalk where now they're responsible for maintaining. So that could be an issue, and probably why I would recommend leaving
Keeping
that.
that sentence.
Just-
Okay, so
just-
it's just.
Yeah, for the.
Okay, no, that's, okay. Okay, no, that seems very reasonable.
All right, so I'll just,
Sounds good.
okay, thank you. Great, the second item on the agenda is proposed administrative code revisions regarding City of Kingston's planning board. This was submitted, a letter to us from Barbara Graves Poller, but she's not here tonight and that is here.
So I can speak to that on her behalf. So here in the city of Kingston, we have 53% of the households in the city of Kingston are renters, only 47% are homeowners. The majority of these households obviously are not property owners then. So one of the things with the planning board does not currently have any renters on the board. And our office believes that it would be appropriate to make a requirement, just a simple revision to that section of the code that basically would require that at least one member of the planning board should be a renter and one member a property owner. So just in case in the future something ever changes, when our property owners are not represented on this board, there's a requirement that at least one member on the board is either a renter or is a renter and one member is a property owner. This is something that discussions have taken place with the planning department, but we are awaiting further input from them before we actually propose the changes. We want to get their input. They're the ones that basically are going to be affected by this.
And then there is a second
There's a
piece
second one.
about the stipend.
About the stipend?
Yes, there is the additional proposal basically that some sort of stipend to be determined by the common council could be awarded to defray incidental costs that planning board members have as a result of serving on the board. All these boards are volunteers. They don't get any type of any kind of compensation whatsoever for their time. And often it can be a deterrent to some of these members to stay on the board if, they have, childcare costs, other costs, and it's actually costing them to volunteer. So the proposal is that the council can award a stipend to help defray some of these costs. We are, not just the planning board, but a lot of our other volunteer boards, we're having a real issue actually getting volunteers to join the board. We're currently, particularly the zoning board, we need members. I think some of the other commissions we're down members as well. So we're hoping that if if there's some sort of stipends in place, some of these individuals might not be deterred from joining the boards because these costs would be defrayed.
Michael?
Can I ask why specifically the planning board for this and not all?
I think
All of our
the
boards?
intention is going to eventually be all the boards, but because this was just because there's going to be a proposed change to the planning board statute. So wrapping that in, so we're not re-amending the planning board statute at a future date.
But I mean, my question is about the composition of the boards as well. If we have a board that requires, any board that requires property owners, should we not also be requiring renters for any of those boards as well?
That definitely could be something worth looking into, particularly, like I say, zoning board of appeals. Yeah. So is that something when we discuss this further with the planning department, also speak with the zoning board chairman as well, and kind of get their input on it? And then propose, are there any other boards that you think it might be?
Well, I think it should just be if there's any board that requires a property owner, seat, it would make sense to then also require a renter seat. And I would assume Historic Preservation Commission probably has a property owner.
So currently, there's no requirements that they are property owners on
No.
the boards.
Oh,
It
okay.
just so happens that right now the compositions are.
Yeah, I never think that's the case in most municipalities.
Sarah?
Yes.
Yeah, so anyway, as the liaison to the planning board, I've had the opportunity to talk to some of the planning board members and also to Sue Cahill. And I think the question that arises is not that, I mean, no one is opposed to having renters on the board, but I think the question is because, as you stated, it's so difficult to get people to participate, that requiring that there would be a renter, if there's not a renter who's interested, then that could result in there not being, that seat, sort of occupied. And also, what if someone were a renter and then they ended up buying a house and then they're no longer a renter, and then they would have to go off the board because, I think it just needs to be thought through a little bit more.
I agree.
And I would say that, I would be in favor of recommending, that if someone who's a renter be on the planning board, so that when the mayor is considering appointments, that would be something that would be there, that it wouldn't necessarily be a hard and fast requirement. And as far as the stipends go, I thought about that too. And I think if we are going to do that, I think it should be for all the boards, not just for this one, and it should probably go to finance, because this will have a budgetary impact if we're going to do that. So I think it should go to that committee for discussion.
Yeah.
So those are my two thoughts.
Yeah, as part of the
Curious
budget
what
for
else.
next year. Sure.
So, do I understand that this, change that we're looking at would require one voting member and one alternate member? So it would be two renters?
I know that was what was initially proposed. As I understand, they're kind of just based on some of the other concerns, just trying to require that one active board member be that. So maybe change. I know the last proposed language was going to be one active member, and then in the event that the appointed, the composition of the board no longer includes the resident renter, so in circumstances like they become a homeowner or leave, or that the next member appointed to the board has to then be in one of the categories that's lacking. But, if there's not a new appointment, like let's say somebody was a renter and then they become a homeowner, they're not kicked off the board so that a new renter, it's just whatever the next appointment would then have to be.
Okay, well, I would still suggest that we think about what that would do in terms of the composition. And I understand that, what's underlying this is wanting to get representation from a renter's point of view, which makes sense since a lot of what the planning board looks at is housing as well as a lot of other things. But I think also, in my experience, since I go to all the planning board meetings, when there's something that comes up related to housing, usually Bartek from the division, the Office of Housing is there speaking from the renter's point of view, and then also renters could speak. People have come to planning board meetings during the hearings and they speak about issues related to rents and other things. So I guess I'm just questioning why this would be a requirement for whether it's a property owner or a renter, whether there should be any requirements, though it could be a recommendation, so I just.
I think it's because all of the planning board members are voting members, and so they're gonna vote, they could potentially vote more in favor of, single family zoning issues, though we no longer have single family zoning, but.
Right, exactly, because I think the
Yeah.
zoning, the new zoning laws sort of take care of some of that. But, yeah, I just think it's worth having more discussion about.
Michael?
Yeah, I think economic diversity is overlooked part of diversity. And I think that there is a lot of perception among renters that, oh, I can't be on this board. Like whether or not it's stated, I think that's sort of an implication that, oh, I'm just a renter, I'm not welcome in this space. And so I think advertising it in this way, you are a renter, we want your voice heard, is extremely powerful and will generate interest in applications. And then if they become homeowners, like Matt said, which is the way like minority and majority appointments work as well. You're not kicked off the board when suddenly the majority becomes the minority. It's the next person. So I think this is great. But so this is just for the planning board, but the stipend is for everybody?
As
Or is this
right
both just
now, everything that's been
as like a
proposed
pilot?
is just for the planning
Yeah.
board.
Okay.
But again, it's not something that's gonna be going before for any votes. There's no proposed actual legislation for the council to pass. It's more just to discuss, and then, as I said, we need feedback from the planning department. And I would imagine, if it looks like we're gonna go forward, I don't know if you want to suggest that we look into expanding it to
Absolutely.
12 other boards.
Yes.
And I would say that we also should look, if we're talking about requiring it on the planning board, are there other boards in which, I think, definitely, I think you're right. Renters think that they shouldn't be involved, but I think that's a question that we could talk about for all the boards. Are renters allowed to be involved and does it need to be, in which case it may not need to be a requirement, it just needs to be made more publicly known that renters are really welcome to be involved on all the boards.
Mhm.
So that's another question I sort of bring.
How many renters are you looking for?
Well, right now,
Just two?
yes.
Well, there's
Hey, Michelle, can I speak at some point? Sorry, I had my hand up, but.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Know that you entered, sorry.
It's okay. No, that's why I spoke out, but I heard somebody else speak, so I could wait my turn. I just wanted you to see me.
Okay, thank you. Jean? Did you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to know
Okay.
about how many people for this board at this time.
Okay. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm joining a little bit late. I end up in the study room in the library at school. And I only heard the last 2 minutes of this conversation, so I apologize if I'm about to make a fool and you already talked about this, but kind of to go off of what Sarah was saying, because I think this is a great idea. And I get how, yes, in the planning board, there's public hearings and people could voice their opinions, but I mean, realistically, we all listen to our constituents, but realistically, we have a stronger voice because we're the ones at the table making the decision. So I think it's super important to recognize that and make sure that we create space. And I think the planning board is a great one to start with, and I think it should be a pilot program because there are too many boards and commissions that don't have enough bodies in the first place. There's too much vacancies, I should say. There are, I think, quorums to every one of our boards and commissions. So the planning board really makes sense to try this. And I'd really encourage folks to vote in favor of this because I think this is just, I concur with everything that Michael was saying earlier. And if anybody else had other points, I only heard what Sarah and Michael had said, but I just think being at the table is definitely different than being able to come to speak. That's just the reality of it. So, thank you.
Thanks. Sure.
I think this is a great idea. But I'm also concerned because there are certain requirements, annual requirements for training for certain boards, and I'm wondering if we can't include that as part of Does the board usually pay that themselves, or is the individual responsible for any training costs?
Yeah, I don't believe any individuals pay for
Any training?
my understanding is that the city would pay for the cost of any training
Including
that's required
transportation? Okay.
for them to continue on the board.
Yeah, because there's this mandatory training,
Yes.
so. Michael?
Speaking of trainings, and you can cut me off if this goes too in the weeds, but are our members, are they required to take like sexual harassment training, like the same employee training that an employee would be required to take?
I'd have to double check on that, but I would imagine that it would be something that we would want, but I don't have the answer to that, so I'd have to double check on that.
I could speak to that. I know not all of them at least do. There might be some that do, but there are definitely some that do not have to do that training.
I feel like that's a requirement that we should consider as well.
I agree with that, Michael. I think, especially now that it's fairly easy. I mean, for TAing, I have to just watch a video for a couple hours at home. It's not a huge ask and it's something that's super important. So I definitely agree that we should be asking everybody to do that.
Michael, Matt, I'm sorry, can you check on that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, this isn't going for a vote tonight, so, anything else anyone wants to discuss about it?
No, I guess I still would like to see if we are gonna be talking about stipends, that it seems we should bring it to finance, because this would have implications.
And if we could get a full financial impact of perhaps
Yeah, I think,
full versus how many there currently are.
I think it should actually go, maybe someone should have a conversation with the mayor because he's
Mm.
working on the budget now for next year. so-
Good idea. I'm happy to bring it up in my next conversation,
Okay,
and I'm sure Michael will too.
Hey, Michelle, I just wanted to confirm, I have E. Dickerman that's in waiting. Is that Ethan that's in the room with you that's waiting to get in?
Kwame, what?
Hello?
I have somebody in waiting to get in, E. Dickerman. I just want to make sure that it's Ethan that's in the room before I let him in.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna let you in. Thanks.
We have 5 security. Thanks, Kwame. Okay. We're good? All right, we're gonna move on to Ethan. German from the Historic Preservation, he's our Historic Preservation Administrator here in the city of Kingston, and he works out of the Planning Department. Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you.
And we're going to, we have a bunch of things. The first will be designating Temple Emmanuel a local landmark.
Correct. So earlier this year, the Historic Landmark Preservation Commission received interest from Temple Emmanuel seeking local landmark status, just as recognition for the structure's unique architectural presentation, if you will. And so we assisted them, and they provided a substantial amount of historical documents demonstrating the connection with a recognized architect who was a second-generation disciple of Frank Lloyd Wright. And the commission voted unanimously that it met the criteria for designation on the local landmark list, as well as potentially being eligible for the state national register, which the property owners will be seeking in the near future.
Michael?
What does a local landmark designate? What does that provide for that for the property?
Right, so what it provides for the property owner is a degree of protection and also honorific recognition. So it is recognized as embodying either architectural significance, historical significance, the potential to yield information, or association with key events. Forgive me if I've left out another item. But it also would require that any projects to the exterior of the structure would be subject to review before the Historic Landmark Preservation Commission to ensure that they conform with the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation. It would also, ensure for, residents and others who are engaging with that structure that its integrity is maintained in perpetuity.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the protection that you're speaking of.
Correct.
Okay. It's an interesting looking building.
It is.
It really is. It was great seeing all the pictures in their presentation and reading about the history.
Yeah, so you can tell that the architect
Yeah, yeah.
certainly drew from from Frank Lloyd Wright's work. And I highly recommend visiting the site. It's really unique. But this is also a very good step for their potential application to the National Register, which would make them eligible for grant funding to continue to maintain that structure.
And so this particular building, the present site is from 1957,
Correct.
so it's a fairly recent.
It's a fairly recent structure, but does meet the
Absolutely.
the rough 50-year mark the government uses. And it certainly meets the other criteria that they work with.
Does their original temple have designation?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
On Beale Street,
Mhm.
yes, that's designated through the Rondout West Grand.
Okay. Curious. Any other? questions? All right. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, this is a resolution of the City of Kingston, New York Common Council designating 243 Albany Avenue venue, Temple Emmanuel SBL 48.317-1-10 as a locally designated landmark in the City of Kingston. All in favor?
Aye.
Any no's? Okay, passes. All right, and then number 5, this is designating 54 West Chester Street a local landmark as well.
Yes, so similar to the previous item, 54 West Chester Street is a historic structure from the late 19th century, excuse me, that corresponds with the Victorian era. The property owner had reached out at an earlier time regarding some work to it, seeking advice. Historic landmarks and heritage area was very limited in terms of the ability to assist them, in terms of advising and having like formal review. And so they, with a preservation in mind, sought local landmark status, provided information on the structure's history, and went before the commission, at which time they recognized it as eligible under criteria C of the National Register, embodying distinctive characteristics of the type, period, or method of construction representing work of master or possesses high artistic values, representative of a significant and distinguishable entity whose components lack individual distinction.
Questions? Well, this is located in Ward 9, so I'm glad to see property owners taking initiative and getting these structures designated. All right, can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second,
So,
any discussion?
No, I just want to thank the Preservation Committee for sending all that information because it was really interesting to read again about the history of that structure.
Our pleasure.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's 4-0.
You're ready? Oh, we're jumping around.
All right, so the next one I'm very excited about, it's designating the Wilbur Local Landmark District. And this has been something that's been in the works for over a year with a historic architectural survey and a lot of ward meetings. So, Ethan?
Yeah, so, Alderperson Hirsch has mentioned, there was a consultant hired, just in the last 3 or 4 years that undertook a substantial survey of Wilbur and Hikaki to determine the eligibility of those areas for the National Register. And as a result of that, there were 2 potential historic districts identified. And the State Historic Preservation Office reviewed the materials submitted, delineated in a more fine way the potential boundaries for those. City staff and the commission reviewed that as well. And the commission utilized the material from the proposed boundary for Wilbur, as well as support from that district to propose that it be designated a local landmark. And also then to prepare it for the next level elevation to the state and national register, which the city is still working towards.
So I have a question. I forget the name of the barn, right? We found out the barn, is it DeWitt? No. Kevin McAvoy was speaking of it about
Yes.
Sojourner Truth, where she lived.
That is correct. I'm going to draw a blank on the exact street, so forgive me, but it may come back to me in a moment. There is a side street in Wilbur that I believe runs east to west, so it's a little uphill, where there once stood a barn in, it must have been the early 1800s, and that property, Commissioner McAvoy has identified as being owned by one of the enslavers of Sojourner Truth. And it was prior to her being purchased and then by the gentleman who lived at the house in Sopus, whose name I'm also drawing. I drive by that house every day. And that was overlooked at the time by the consultant's report. I don't believe they were able to dive as deeply into that, but that information will be provided to a future consultant when the property is up, the district is elevated to the state national register.
It's exciting. Okay.
And were there any comments from residents in the district who were not interested in seeing it turned into a historic district, or no?
No.
Generally positive.
It was really positive. We had multiple ward meetings, neighborhood meetings down there, and the neighbors, actually, the people in that area, we had to have, what, 10 signatures or 14?
City code mandates it was 10. We exceeded that. And yes, as you said, I never received anything, adverse. A majority of them were very much in favor of it because of the area's unique history, but also becoming eligible for the federal and state homeowner rehab tax credits as well as commercial tax credits.
Yeah, there was a lot of support, and there was a PAC that was formed, and a lot of the neighbors were part of that PAC.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. So thank you for all your hard work on that. All right, so this is a type 2 action. Is there anything that I have to do other than stating?
Seeker?
Yeah.
No, just that it's type 2 action under seeker, so there's no environmental impact.
Okay.
No need for further.
Okay. All right, so can I get a motion? And a second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, let me read this. Resolution of the City of Kingston, New York Common Council designating a portion of the Wilbur neighborhood as shown on attached map and property listing as the locally designated landmark district in the City of Kingston. This is a type 2 action that does not require any further action. May All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right. Are you gonna speak on the next one too, since Sue's not here?
I can speak to it to a certain extent.
Okay.
Uh,
Let me
So-
just, sorry. So this next one is a revision of section 405.26 HLPC of the form-based code and remove section 264.
Yes, so, city staff and the commission recognize that, section 45.26L, would require some amendments, in terms of conforming with codes that are more common elsewhere throughout New York State and consistent, with this, state law in terms of, local landmark districts, local landmark commissions. Changes range from, or proposed changes range from amending the title for the commission's determination document from from preservation notice of action to certificate of appropriateness, a term and document that's more commonly recognized, not just in New York State, but across the country. And also to address potential inconsistencies that have been identified with section 264. Could you talk?
Yeah, I can speak a bit. So when the zoning code initially added the section, this is prior to last year's whole adoption of the new zoning code. Under previous zoning codes many years ago, we incorporated all of the procedures pertaining to landmarks and historical preservation in that. But we left the old chapter in there, and there's some inconsistency between that. So as part of updating this, also basically removing the old code that is not being utilized in any way, shape, or form under the way we operate with our boards, and to remove any of that inconsistency or potential for people to look up and say, oh, here's a code that all these things are under, but we're not going by that. So it's necessary for us to remove it at this time.
Would this just be an ordinance, or does this have to?
It's with the zoning code, it's an ordinance.
Okay.
So
Okay, just double checking.
we can modify it by.
Okay. Any questions? A resolution of the City of Kingston, New York Common Council updating section 405.26L Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission as amended in the attached code language and remove section 264 Historic and Architectural Design Districts from the City Administrative Code. Can I get a motion?
Motion?
Second? Second? Any discussion? Call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passes. Alright, getting through this. All right, number 8 would be reestablishing city code section 360 exemptions for historic properties. Is that why you're here, Mr. Beaver?
Yes.
Okay, welcome.
Well, Ethan and Sue came to me quite a while ago. We were talking about this. This property tax exemption expired, I think, about 9 years ago, if I remember correctly. It had some on the books prior to its expiration that continued and finished out. It's just another way to, in my view, encourage owners to follow local code option to appear in front of local boards with regard to historic preservation. And then also if there's any specific requirements by those boards, and if those requirements cause any increase in assessed value, that that portion attributable to the historic preservation would be abated 100% for the first 5 years, and then winding down for the next additional 5 years, so it's a 10-year exemption. The exemption was lightly used in the past, but I would imagine it would be the same, lightly used exemption, but probably a good tool to have for Ethan's boards to be able to offer, encourage people to come in, I think, do the right thing and have the board review their projects.
Yeah, there was a project uptown on St. James Street that was like done privately, and got the exemptions, but they actually increased apartment units in the building.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
I think that's a really positive way to also put units online and by utilizing these tax credits. So.
And the abatement is just for the assessed value, although it's attributable to the historic preservation. Right. So if there's other items in there, like major condition upgrades on the interior that aren't historic preservation, those would not be abated. And anything else?
Yeah, I mean, like the property that you mentioned, and earlier we talked about the rehab tax credit programs. This would be another program to incentivize preservation under the concept that preservation pays. The city has a very rich stock of old buildings, and it's worthy of recognizing that and encouraging maintenance of that. And we see this as yet another tool to do so.
So it's only for those properties, those residential properties or commercial properties, I would imagine?
I do believe it is for any property that is historically designated, whether
So
it's
local or state, right? And so to the extent that this would provide for an exemption, what is it, up to the first 5 years, 100%, and then in each year up to year 9, I guess it declines by 20%?
Correct.
Okay, so, but does it include school taxes? And so does the school district have to have a public hearing and approve of it?
Off the top of my head, as far as I understand, that the school would have to opt in, I believe.
So for expenses.
Right. So the local option, each county, city, town, village, and school district may choose whether or not to allow the exemption.
If I remember correctly, we're not speaking to the county.
Right.
And then the other local option is to reduce the percentage of the exemption, and limit the eligibility exemption to those forms of alteration. Now, just to note that Orbis's interpretation of Officer of Property Tax, property must be designated as a landmark or be a property that contributes to the character of the historic district. I think we had talked about this, that, I'm not the best judge of that, and I would be looking for some sort of signal from the board to help interpret that.
Right, so within districts, you oftentimes have eligible, contributing, and non-eligible, but within the bounds. So those properties would likely not fall into that category. But that tends to be fewer and far.
So conceivably, the new district that's been nominated, each of, provided this is passed, each homeowner then would be eligible to take advantage of this exemption in the event that they chose to rehabilitate their buildings.
If they would qualify if they went in front of the board.
Right.
And the board specifically approves specific improvements, right? The board accepted their application and says, yes, we'll review those specific historical improvements, right? And if the board is approving those specific improvements, and those specific improvements add additional assessed value, just that additional assessed value would have an exemption on it. Not the whole
Right, not the
house
whole-
itself,
Yeah.
just those,
Yeah.
But so they would still need to go in front of the board and get approval. So that would be the signal to me that they've made the judgment that these, contribute to the character of the historic district.
But it would also include things, measures like a replacement of the roof, because it's for the preservation of the property.
Right, I mean, I believe that would qualify if, if that property is meeting that criteria of being eligible or contributing, as well as having gone before the commission. So if it's a substantial rehab and they do all of those qualifying steps and receive a preservation notice of action, or what would be a certificate of appropriateness, and then go to Dan with the application for the program, that may be eligible.
Terrell sort of asked it and was answered, but I just wanted to get some examples of the kind of rehabilitation, historic rehabilitation that would increase your assessment.
I think for the most part, it's going to be properties that, let's say, are at the end of their economic life that have, been valued in a way that represent the end of that economic life. And then they come from the board and they do a substantial renovation. Those are the properties we're going to be looking at. Now, if someone just does a roof, we're not out there looking at every single roof, every single property. We're, most of the time we're making that assumption that it has a functioning roof. So let's just say it's a roof, it happened to be in front of the board, but they had a historical roof before, and they got a newly designed historical roof. I don't think that's really gonna add any assessed value to the property, therefore not a need for the exemption. But let's just say we have roof, we have, redone the windows, we have the new special type of siding, the special paints, and the special trim on the porches. Now we're talking about this property is going from one level in its life to it's been rejuvenated in its economic life. It's been really substantially expanded, and in the marketplace, we know it's going to be more attractive. That would be, I think, a good example of when it's going to have an increase in assessed value.
I do have one more question.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So this is not an automatic process. If they get that certificate of appropriateness, the property owner then needs, the impetus is on them to apply
Sure,
through
definitely.
you.
There's an application process, there's a timeframe that they would need to do that. Taxable status is March 1st, there's certain occupancies involved as well. I would imagine either it's gonna be making anyone aware of this, sending them to my office, having that conversation with them. Hey, this is what you would need to do and when you would need to do it. And when you need to make application. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Just a sort of follow-up question, let's say somebody is just renovating a bathroom, within a house, that would not be eligible because it's not historic. Unless it were, unless they could make a claim or make a case that it was a historic.
No, I don't.
Renovation.
Took a shower.
I don't know,
The interior doesn't count. I think.
Correct.
the interior doesn't account, this is the exterior, okay, so that,
Yeah.
okay,
So you could have large renovation that's interior and exterior would be, my job to decipher what is those attributable value to the exterior, right? And what is left over for the interior that's not.
Okay, thank you.
Does this require additional training for you in your office that you need to that we would need to budget for next year, or is this a skill that your office already has in identifying these kinds of things?
I think if something were to come up where there was some possible additional training, that I think my current budget would be able to account for it. But I think this falls under basic valuation skills. And if not, I, would have the time and the resources to track that information down to make an appropriate valuation of the property. Thank you, appreciate that question.
So as it concerns, say, Wall Street, and the pipeline, I should say, were that to be removed, would the buildings then be eligible to make improvements and avail themselves of this exemption?
I think, well, first I would say it's on a case-by-case basis, right? So you'd have to look at each individual structure and at each individual application and determine if the work that's being proposed would be consistent with the Secretary of Interior's standards for, in this case, likely restoration, right? If that were the case, it's entirely possible that those types of projects that would return storefronts to a more appropriate presentation along that streetscape could qualify.
For this exemption?
Yeah, obviously that would be step one, and then we'd have to make a determination, getting, let's say, this hypothetical situation here, like what would bringing the properties to, typical fascia, does that really increase their assessed value? I'm not certain that would.
Well, if you're returning it, if you're rehabilitating it, if you're faithfully rehabilitating it, then the value would conceivably.
Potentially, yeah, potentially.
So,
Weren't we supposed to, if that was to come down, weren't we supposed to restore the buildings back to the shape that they were before the pipeline went up?
oops, I'm not sure. What is your question?
I said, weren't we supposed to, if that came down, weren't we supposed to fix anything wrong with that, the pipe, that the
I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, I want to be careful. First, I'm not speaking for anyone.
Yeah, I just want to know if they would be able to avail themselves.
Yeah, but just taking this question, I'm not going to speak for anyone else that spoke on it, so unless, you can always, check with the mayor.
I didn't know if we discussed that in full, I thought we did.
There was specific language used, but I'm not putting myself.
Okay, that's what I said.
Repeating something that's not something I said, so, thanks.
But they would still be eligible for that, if, yes,
If
sorry.
it changed their
I know
assessment.
I'm going, yeah.
If it changed the
Process.
Okay,
So the only other thing that I would add is I think this is an incredible opportunity. I was really disappointed when it went away, 9 years ago, 4.4. And so I think it's an excellent tool. The reason it didn't work before, though, this is like before your time, was because the property owner wasn't properly given this information. They were not given this information at the beginning of the process. And so sometimes they went along and did whatever, rehabilitative measures that was approved, but then later came to find out that they needed to have applied for this and had been told about it and the extent of it, and get that certificate of appropriateness. And that just was not done. So I think if there's, I'm so glad that you're here. There was not your position before. And I think a lot of, a lot of property owners just kind of lost out on it. And then it was decided, well, no one's using it, let's take it away. So, this is great. Oh, would, the barrel, what is it, the,
Lock barrel?
The-
Lock barrel.
the
Barrel
barrel,
factory?
the
Yeah.
Fowler and Keith building, they would be eligible for this as well.
It's potential, but
It's going
I
to stay.
think I would want to ask Dan, because some of that work, I think it had already gone underway, and so I think one of the other criteria to be eligible is that project needs to be reviewed prior to work commencing
Right.
for those costs to be eligible, is that correct?
Typically, that's how it is.
So they've already saw us.
I would have to look into that specifically. Yes. First, prior to. You file scenarios and look at this.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think this is really great. I'm hoping it'll also encourage the coffee to come aboard, right? And move along where it's. And, given the change here in the city over the last 10 years or so, I think that more people will take advantage of this. We are a historic city, so I think it's good. So, just gonna, any more questions before I read the resolution? Oh,
So related to that public engagement, is your office planning on sending a letter to owners of historic properties or just social media and the usual fare?
Yeah, I mean, we are working towards that, and every time a project comes before me, I always am notifying them about that we have tax credit programs. And if this is readopted, that would also be part of that package of aid opportunities that would be shared. People are very much in favor of it. We've had probably about a dozen people looking into the tax credit programs in all different sections of the city. Certainly, we would want to get it out. The city's different platforms, and mailings could be looked into potentially. But we would also be probably, discussing it at the commission meetings and perhaps presentations. Like earlier this year, we had a reservationist come to talk about the rehab programs, which resulted in someone already there for a project under review, shifting towards a homeowner rehab project. So yes, we'll be, promoting it as much as we can.
And just to, Tara, just to answer your questions, alterations or rehabilitations must have commenced after the effective date of the local law, or resolution adopting this exemption. So, local law first, and then qualifiers come, after they've, started, after they start rehabilitation or alteration. Makes sense?
Yeah, no, I understood that to be the case. Saying, I didn't know that what do you call it, the barrel?
The barrel.
The barrel factory. So they're basically just doing like structural work. So it's right now, I'm saying, right now. So that wouldn't, so the work that they've done now would not fall under this rehabilitation work. Have they come before you, I would imagine, to get approval?
At time, they probably did not, because they only, in the last few weeks, came before the commission for a recommendation, like an endorsement to the state national register. So they're not fully designated yet,
Okay.
but in probably this year, they will be at the next state board meeting.
Oh, just a question, in terms of engagement, again, would you also then be working closely with the planning board and the planning department? Just to let them know, so that if somebody comes before them with a plan and it's a historic rehab, they could then suggest that also.
No, absolutely.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
so this will be a little law, but we would just call it a resolution, so.
Yeah, so this is a proposed local law.
Right, or reestablish.
Yeah, but it's gonna be a local law to reestablish
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay. A resolution of the City of Kingston, New York Common Council, reestablishing a local law, section 360, article 6, exemptions for historic properties of the city's administrative code as provided with updated language attached here too. This is a type 2 action under seeker, not requiring any further action. Can I get a motion? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you so much, Ethan. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
And please extend our thanks to you.
Absolutely. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. So there's a,
Legislative action.
what? Oh. No, we have, so it's not on the agenda. Are we still discussing this now? This letter from Barbara?
I have those number 3.
Yeah, I was on the agenda.
No, that was, oh, all right.
Yeah, there was nothing pertaining, you're talking about the legislative procedures.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah, that, I don't believe that should be still on the agenda, if you look at the numbering on the agenda items.
okay.
There are 7.
I have 8.
I have 8 on.
Yeah,
I
we
have
have
8 on mine too.
Yeah, now, the actual, but there's nothing, what's marked as 3 is the designating temple manual. It's actually like in the materials marked as 3.
All right, well, all right, this got put on as
Yeah,
8, yeah.
it was initially on, and the purpose is basically, we ran into some issues, finding out that when local laws are being passed, they're not being updated online. If we go to our city website, and we want to look at the city code, there's a link to what's called E-codes, which is a system that's used statewide, all municipal codes are up there. And a lot of our local laws still haven't been updated. So we looked into this, that it's basically, you know, when we send the code or the new passed local laws to the state, eventually E-code will gather all the past municipal local laws and update the system. It takes them a while to do it.
Yeah.
So it's in the city's best interest to make it a policy moving forward that as soon as we get confirmation it's been filed with the state, that we send notification to E-code to have them updated. Because not only are, you know, other individuals, but also city officials, city people are going and looking at the code and we're not seeing the current code.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that because, you know, when we pass laws, sometimes some of my constituents will call and they'll say, well, I went to the code and it's not in there, you know, and so I think it's important that it be updated as soon as the law is passed. So it makes it easier to enforce. So I would, whatever that means, whether it's a budgetary item that we should consider for the upcoming budget, I'm happy to talk about that.
So I think we're going to be exploring what options with the clerk's office to kind of set that in motion, whether we will need any kind of action from the council. So I think that's why it was initially going to be put on, and then as we kind of discovered what was happening, get in touch with the clerk's office, I think we're gonna need to work out kind of, it could even just be an internal policy with the clerks.
Okay.
But if further action by the common council is needed, you will definitely be in the next month or so.
Right, and just want to make sure the public understands that these laws are still in effect, even if they couldn't find it.
Yes,
Yes.
so,
Yes.
so just for the record, once it is filed with the Secretary of State, it is official, okay?
Yes,
And it is in effect, whether or not it's on E-code. But
Yes.
we're gonna be doing everything in our power to make sure that E-code is updated like as soon as possible. So as soon as we get the notifications that Secretary of State has has filed the law, that we will then notify ECO to get it.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Okay, Andrew, are you still there?
I am.
Okay.
But just a quick clarifying question, Matt, should that be on old business, or will you bring back your office or corp counsel's office, bring back something when you're ready?
Well, I
Or should I
think
talk to Barbara when,
yeah, it's something that's gonna warrant further discussion, and whether or not it's something that really is going to require common council action, or whether it's something where just an internal policy. So the clerk's office is responsible for filing local laws.
right,
Making a policy now for the clerk's office, as soon as they receive the notification from the state that the local law has been filed, that now it's their policy, as soon as they receive that notification, to contact E-codes themselves. That wouldn't require any further action from the council unless you wanted to codify that, which doesn't necessarily seem.
No.
yeah, I don't think we should get into that, so I'll just reach out to either you or Barbara as we get closer to know whether or not we should put this on the agenda for next month, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's actually two things for old business. It was on last month's agenda, so you have everything there. I think one of them, Michelle forwarded the email, so it was just the one change. So I'm gonna actually, if it's okay, Michelle, can we talk about that one first with the
Yeah.
resolution?
Sure.
So Jeannie, at the last committee meeting, there were two things that the committee had asked Jeannie to look into and do, and she did it immediately. I edited it today and sent it to Michelle. It was just, I can't remember who requested it, but Jeannie found the exact bill from Congress. So I put that in the title. And then the other thing was to request that Congressman Pat Ryan was also added to the elected official list. Although after I did the edits and while my mind was wandering today, I realized because it's a Senate bill, I don't know if we want to include either, if we want to make it just the senators and not House of Representatives, or keep Congressman Ryan's name on there. But what we have now, what Michelle has and what I'll send to the clerks if you guys approve of it, is that, like I said, I just added the bill that Jeannie found in the title, so it says, did you guys all see this?
Oh, I didn't see it.
You didn't,
No.
okay, so I'll read the title to you now. So it's resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, to adopt a memorializing resolution calling on federal representatives to sponsor, co-sponsor, and support resolution S.2385, calling for funding for clean and safe drinking water and sanitary sewer systems for federally recognized tribes and its members. So that was one change. So it does say, like, to sponsor, co-sponsor, and support one specific resolution from the Senate. And then on the bottom, I just added after President Joe Biden, Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, and Representative Patrick Ryan. Those are the only two changes that I made based on what Jeannie provided.
Just gonna resend that.
Thank you, Jean.
That's the,
I wonder if it has the same as for the House. I think it's still valuable to keep Pat on it, because obviously any bill needs to pass both houses of the legislature.
Yep.
it's gone over to the legislators from here
Oh, great.
about climbing the ladder. And hopefully before November.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this, Jean.
Yeah.
Did you see that? Oh, you want to see it?
I'm not sure you were this way if I knew you were looking. Okay.
Just writing up the.
That sign is absolutely beautiful, Andrea. Can you hear me?
Yeah, isn't it really nice?
Did you do that? Did you Like,
Well, it was my idea for the colors and I thought like, I wasn't sure if it was really gonna happen, but Ed and Mike made it happen at DPW, so.
I sent her all the information, I just sent her the picture, and she said when she pulls herself together, she's definitely gonna reach out to you.
Okay,
That
Yeah.
was, you know,
So this is the size of the car.
did you see it?
No, no, I haven't seen it.
Oh.
If you have a picture, show us.
And she sent me a picture, and I almost started crying right here.
No,
I was like, all right, hold it together.
Oh, wow.
Hold it together. Absolutely, it brings goosebumps to me.
Okay. All right. So back to this. This is a memorializing resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, calling on federal representatives to support funding for clean and safe drinking water and sanitary sewer systems for federally recognized tribes and
Oh,
its members.
lovely.
Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second,
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Passes 4-0.
Wait a minute, what is? Michelle, can you see that from here?
Beautiful.
Oh, that's beautiful. I like the color too, yeah.
Yeah.
Great job.
Oh, sorry.
I tell DPW.
and no, I don't get any credit, it's all
No,
Mike,
no.
Sign Guy and Ed. Those
No.
two that get the credit, not me, but thank you.
Thank you. That's,
All right, and last, regarding.
Well, actually, Michelle, do you want me to send that with the changes? Because I didn't send it to Elisa. Do you want me to email it to her or do you want me to?
I just sent it to all the aldermen so that she's on there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
this
All right,
is,
then you sent it to the alderman?
Yeah, I'll just send it again right now to her.
All right,
Thanks.
it should be good.
Okay,
Yep, I see it now. I didn't see that last email.
okay, I'll forward it to her just specifically.
oh, I,
So, across from the $4,000 the email, someone was.
Which one?
what do you
Oh, somebody had a.
want? Somebody had a-
But this one, I just had one.
Parks and Recs, sounds like a, yes.
What are they doing it for?
We had one related to us.
It might have been like a camp event.
Skate party, August 14th.
Where's the next one?
It's probably for the kids, because they have camp all
They have-
summer.
they have summer
Took
camp.
all the camps. It's 4,000, they took all the, they took all the camps and brought them.
Michael's just upset he didn't get
I
invited.
didn't get invited.
Is that what you meant?
All right, Andrew.
Thank you. All right, so the last item is to come back to the Zoom conversation, public speaking in Zoom. So as I promised you all at last month's meeting, because we didn't have a supermajority from the members who were there, which I think there were 7 voting members in attendance. So I just circled back around and asked Drew and Steve Shabbat, who were the 2 that weren't there. They both opted for choice 1, which is to continue to do Zoom comments, but the speakers must be on camera. Steve also voted in favor of option 2, which was, so 1 and 2. So option 2 was to adhere to the 12 o'clock deadline for folks to sign up. So like I open up the floor in chambers, I would not open up the floor in Zoom. You would have to sign up ahead of time. So with that, unless anybody has changed, that is 6 votes And we need 6 votes because it's a council amendment. Or council rule amendment. So there's 6 votes to do Zoom Zoom public comments, but everybody has to have their camera on. 3 votes were no Zoom. So I don't know if you want to discuss that, because it's, you know, it's enough to pass, but it's close. So if there's discussion and debate, should happen tonight, and maybe more at caucus, because like I said, it does need 6 votes. And then in terms of the adhering to the 12 o'clock, there's 5 votes for that. We don't that is already in our council rules, so I would just adhere to that. So I'm going to adhere to that, and we'll make that known to the public. So that's what I have, and I did write the amendment, and I'll read it and send it to you, Michelle, if that's what you guys want to do. But that's where the votes are: 6 for Zoom, and actually, let me read it to you now, just so you have what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So it would add a line in Rule 7, 1G through, and this will go following the sentence. If a speaker wishes to speak through the virtual platform, they may sign up by email, or I would have to change that to must. They must sign up, or they shall sign up by emailing the city clerk by 12 p.m. the day of the meeting. Throughout their testimony, virtual speakers must have their cameras on in a manner that allows the council to view the speaker. This way, it also avoids, I think, as much ambiguity as I could take away from that. So they don't have their camera on, but they're not, you know, they're like this. I joined on Zoom so I could do that model there. So that's what I have based on every conversation I've had with either you at the committee or with the folks who weren't at committee last month. So I'll turn the floor over.
I have a
Thank
question.
you. Sure.
When someone sends in an email comment that they want to have read, does that also have to be in by noon as well? Or is it the same time for signing up for virtual as it would be for getting?
A written comment? No, I mean, no, you don't have to do that, but
I was just curious.
yeah, we don't have any rules on the written comment. They could send us written comments anytime, anywhere. I mean, if they send it to us at
Great.
6:30, there's a good chance we're not going to be able to read it. So, I mean, maybe that is something that we should, I mean, I'm hesitant because I don't think that should be a rule, but I think it would be helpful for folks to realize that if they send it at 6:30, 7 o'clock, there's a very real chance we're not going to get it. And the clerk's office, they're typically gone and they come back for the meeting, so they're not going to get it on the website. But we don't have we don't have a rule to say that you have to do that.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Well, I stand by my 1 and 2, so I'm still in favor of keeping Zoom forward facing.
And I mean, Sarah, Michael, and Bob were the ones who were saying no, so I don't know if you are okay with the decision or, or not okay, but just gonna keep your vote and it'll be 6-3, but.
Well, I was under the impression that this was preference, and it was my preference to end Zoom comment, but.
Yes, yeah.
Of the council to proceed with it, yeah.
And I would say that so long as everything goes smoothly, and people are obeying it and they're following through and they are, featuring themselves and not a masked person so we can't see their face or, whatever. So as long as we can see who they are, then I'm fine with 1 and 2. And then if it turns out that people are misusing it, then we would go to no Zoom and just a written comment.
Right, exactly. We could make another amendment in a month, 2, or 10. Yep.
But I hope people do behave because it would be nice to have this option for people to participate. Michael?
Is this not overly arduous though on our clerks?
I don't think so. I mean, I could talk to Elisa about that, but I mean, right now people still do sign up some people do follow the rule to sign up. So, it's already a practice that they've established. But I could talk to Elisa, it's Kwame here today, so I don't know if Kwame, you want to weigh in? If not, I could talk to Elisa in the morning just to double check. But in terms of the camera being on, it might just take us a little bit more time to get the virtual speaker to start speaking, because we have to make sure that, normally I just say, talk a little bit, can you hear me? And then we move forward. So it would have to be, they turn on their camera. So, probably a couple seconds extra between, but that's not the clerk's time. It is the clerk's time. It's all our time too. Does that make sense? Kwame, do you want to weigh in on that? But unless you think that's solely Elisa's responsibility. I'll talk to her in the morning. I'll talk to Elisa in the morning and he's
I
here.
think that's probably best for her to speak about that tomorrow morning.
Fine, I'll reach out to Elisa in the morning and circle back around.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
Yep.
Michael?
And then, so we do have a number of people who have continuously given Zoom comments, but most of them do it through their phone. You can see that they're just on their phone with the dial in for Zoom. Are we disabling the dial in for Zoom now?
If you use the camera on your phone, then I would imagine they'd be okay.
But I could see that when somebody does the call-in number for Zoom versus joining via link.
Yeah, no,
So are we
that's-
disabling
Yes.
the link
Yes,
or disabling the call-in number?
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Well, I don't know if do we necessarily need to do that? Because I'm sure that there are people that watch that don't speak. And would we want to disable that feature for those categories of folks?
I think the point was to deny people anonymity. And so by allowing them to call in, we don't see the face.
No. I'm saying like people who call in but aren't speaking. They're just calling in to listen to the meeting. They're not speakers.
Comment.
Right, they're not there to speak. I mean, I don't know how many people do that. I don't know if there's a way for us to even know what the percentage is of folks who watch it on their computers versus watch it on the camera. But I know that there are a lot of people that watch our meetings that do not speak. So I personally would think that we should leave that open for those folks. But willing to hear difference in opinions.
I have a question. If somebody wanted to speak, let's say I'm watching on my phone and I feel like I want to speak, how do I mean, people are disabled, right? Because they cannot speak because the clerks would have to permit them to speak, right?
And that is how we've been operating for the last 2 years after that, the atrocious Zoom bomb that we had several years ago. We have to give permission to allow folks in. So if they want to speak, I'm not going to open the floor to Zoom comments. If you do not sign up by 12, then you do not have
The right to speak.
the right to speak unless you want to get to City Hall within the time period. So, and then, in the beginning, at least, I could work with Elisa and maybe we can come up with a blurb, like when people sign up, we can make it clear, like, this is what you have to do. You can't call in on your phone because, if you can't, you have to have the camera.
Were you asking more about someone calling from like a landline
Yeah,
to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, yeah.
because you see that pop up when we're looking at
You
the
see the
Zoom
phone.
screen. You could see the phone signal, which means somebody dialed them to the Zoom number rather than clicked a link on our website to access it.
I used to use that a lot, just
So-
listen in the meeting.
So just another clarification, if somebody were to sign up by noon, but they're calling in on a landline, what would happen if it turns out we're not seeing their face? Can they be disabled immediately because they're not following the rules?
They would have to be, but we'll have to make it clear that in the beginning, or when they sign up, like, this is how you'll have to do it, and you can't call from a landline.
Right.
Because you'll need a camera. There will most likely be a couple flaws in the system whenever you establish a new system.
Of course.
That's what happens, especially since we've been doing the same for a long time. so there'll be a little wrinkles, but I'm sure Lisa and I will work smoothly together to iron them out as we go. But yeah, so to that, Michael, I just totally forgot landlines exist, so I was thinking.
Yeah, there's a phone number you can call,
Right.
not necessarily.
But so Jeannie, did you just say that you used to listen to meetings on your landline?
Yeah,
So we still want to include that for folks who aren't speaking, but yeah, we'll just have to make it.
and they, like the county does it too,
It's a
like,
conference
you
call.
call in on the county, you call in on the landline, you listen to everybody talk. Like, that was the way, you keep up with all this stuff.
Michael?
So if somebody, and if this is getting too far in the weeds, or if we want to discuss this in caucus with every process, but if somebody, like I sign up, I say, Michael Tierney, I want to speak. But what if I'm not technologically savvy enough to realize that I didn't rename myself on Zoom, Michael Tierney, like you have your name there, and I just have my phone number, and I raise my, like, the clerk will call Michael Tierney, are you there? And I'll raise my hand.
Yeah, but we could also probably ask for phone numbers too.
I think that would be
Yes.
wise.
And they sign up, thanks for.
And I think that would further encourage Nazis.
Yeah,
Or discourage Nazis. Sorry.
what's happening over there?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we just want people to identify themselves and we welcome
And we want
them
to be able to
to
see
talk,
them.
but we want to see who's speaking and we want their name.
Sorry. You didn't mean that.
I'm willing to try it,
Yeah.
1 and 2.
And see what
And,
happens.
and then we could always come back and rethink it if necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I would just ask, since this is a change in system, I mean, I know we haven't done Zoom comments for 2 months and folks understood that. Didn't hear any complaints, but, just do the best and I'll do the same to make sure that folks know that this change is likely gonna come. It wouldn't actually happen probably until October's meeting, because we would vote on this.
Okay.
And I don't want to make the rule or change the system until the rule is official, just in case there's a change of mind or anything. And then we'll trust Brian to write a stellar story to get the word out to the public as well.
We'll start in October if we pass it in September.
Possibly.
If it passes in September, which it looks like it will, but
Okay, thank you.
yeah, and Brian, always feel free to reach out if you have any questions, especially if I'm not there in person. I do have the language. Do you want me to email it to you, Michelle, or do you want me to speak it?
Email, thanks.
Okay, let me just find which document this is.
Will this just be the description, put the whole thing in the description on the committee report?
The committee report will be, sorry, I have so many tabs right now. A resolution of the City of Kingston Common Council to amend the council rules to add to Rule 7 1G. That's where the placement will go, and this is the language. I'm gonna email it to, I'll email it to everyone. Is that okay?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then what I'll do is actually put it in the rule documents. All right, should be over. However long the internet works, however like quick the internet works. And I'll make sure to add it into the actual document and then send it over. So Elisa has it, and then once it passes, we'll update the website. Or somebody else will update the website.
So I have it, so resolution to amend the council rules to add Rule 7 1G through.
It should say add to.
Add to Rule.
Yes.
1G, okay.
Yeah, just because it's not adding a rule, it's just adding that one sentence and then changing what I highlighted in red from may to must.
Okay, so, all right, a resolution of the city of Kingston, New York, Common Council amending council rules to add Rule 7(1)G. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussions? Any discussion on what we're passing?
We're voting.
It was all good.
Okay, all right, any discussion?
I actually didn't need it.
A resolution of the city of Kingston, New York, Common Council amending council rules to add to Rule 7(1)G. Any discussion?
Can you actually just write language, either write the actual language or just write language attached? Because that should be part of the committee report.
Okay. let me
So
just-
language attached is fine, and then I'll get that to you.
Okay. Okay, call for a vote, all in
Yeah,
favor?
actually, there was some discussion now. So just to be clear though, it says, sorry, throughout their testimony, virtual speakers must have their cameras in a manner that allows the council to view the speaker. It does not prohibit them from altering their faces or wearing a mask or anything though. I don't think we could prohibit that because it's freedom of expression, but it does not
I-
resolve that issue of somebody.
Review the speaker's foot.
That's a good one.
So.
Well,
it
can
just
we
says
put
view the
speaker's face?
So that we can readily.
I mean, so I'm hesitant with that because how about if somebody is called, I mean, this is like a
We have to be.
total hypo situation, but how about if somebody is in a setting where they are wearing a mask for health reasons?
Right.
Yeah, they could be in the library giving public comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Exactly. I'm in my own little closed off section though, so I don't need to wear a mask, but if I was out with my fellow students, then I might be wearing a mask. And I might still want to comment, so I don't know, like that was an ambiguity that I thought about, not necessarily ambiguity, but I don't know, this is the one I settled, instead of just saying have the cameras on, this is where I settled, but I'm open to whatever you guys want.
I don't think we could ask them to say that, so I'm not even in favor of it. I'm just saying it doesn't resolve that necessarily,
Doesn't
the
resolve that
issue.
issue.
right, like the head should be in the frame, not the speaker's foot. Like, but the head might have a mask on it.
But all we're saying is the speaker, yeah, we're not
Yeah.
saying.
Speaker must be visible.
Must be visible. That's not really specific, is it?
I know.
What if they stick their elbow up?
I would say that's
Your
allowed.
lips moving, basically.
Well, what is our attorney?
All right. So what you're looking to accomplish, you're never gonna be able to, completely require that, like, their face is showing it all. So, it sounds to me probably the best thing is in the part where they have to sign up ahead of time, that you're requiring that their contact information, their names, address, whatever other information be provided at that time, so that can help identify them. And then this is just secondary, requiring that, their video and their face and that they be on camera if they want to do that. And then don't put as much focus on, there has to be a portion of their face, or getting caught up in the weeds.
Right, and we'll just see how people behave.
And then
Yeah.
just like Andrew said earlier, there's bound to be, some tweaking if you see how it goes and you still run into issues. And maybe, further changes are needed. But I think, probably the most important part of this is getting the information ahead of time before you're even giving them access to speak.
Right.
And then you can
Okay.
identify them that way.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right,
Okay,
so, all right, calling for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, Andrea. Can I call for a motion?
I'll make that I'll send over the change as soon as I get to it.
Sign that.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank
Get home
you.
safe.
You still in Albany?
I am. So,
Safe trip home.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Aye.
All right. Get a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
You're the one tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Like automatic check.
Good night, all.
No, Michelle did. She said yes for all of them.
Night, Kwame, thank you.
So I think
Thank
she's-
you.
All right, have a good night.